The year is 1940, and Nazi Germany's shadow is spreading across Europe like wildfire. France is falling, resistance is dying, but in the middle of the chaos, there's one woman the Gestapo can't stop talking about. They call her the White Mouse. Because no matter how hard they chase her, no matter how many traps they set, she always slips away. Her real name, Nancy Wake. An Australian journalist turned spy, turned one of the most dangerous women in Europe. Before the war, Nancy was just a sharp-tongued, glamorous woman living in Marseille with her French husband, Henri Fiocca. But after witnessing Nazi brutality firsthand as a reporter in Vienna, seeing Jews whipped in the streets, she made a silent promise. If ever the chance came, I'd do something to stop them. When France fell, she didn't run. She stayed, and that's when Nancy's second life began, smuggling Allied soldiers out of occupied France, running safe houses, and helping downed pilots escape over the Pyrenees. Her charm and quick wit became her greatest weapons. She could walk past checkpoints, flirt with guards, and talk her way out of almost anything. To the Germans, she was invisible. To the resistance, she was indispensable. But the Gestapo wasn't laughing. They put a 5 million franc bounty on her head, dead or alive. And as the net closed in, Nancy had one final choice: stay and die, or vanish and come back stronger. What happened next turned her from a spy into a legend. By 1943, Nancy Wake's name was echoing through every Gestapo office in France. Her network had helped hundreds of Allied soldiers escape. Her husband, Henri, begged her to stop, but Nancy refused. Then one night, a message came through the underground channels. They know who you are. They're coming. The Gestapo had finally caught her scent. Within hours, Nancy was on the run. No time to pack, no goodbyes. Just a forged ID, a bicycle, and a will to survive. Her mission: cross the Pyrenees mountains into Spain, one of the most dangerous escape routes in Europe. The journey was over 500 kilometers, with German patrols, freezing weather, and mountain passes that swallowed men whole. But Nancy wasn't like most people. At one point, her group's radio operator was captured. She had to deliver an urgent message to the resistance in Toulouse, over 100 kilometers away, and the only way was by bike. So she rode, day and night. No sleep, no food, just adrenaline and grit. I got there, she later said, but when I did, I couldn't sit down for a week. That ride became one of the most heroic feats in the history of the French resistance. Eventually, Nancy made it across the Pyrenees into Spain, cold, exhausted, and half-starved, but alive. From there, she reached London, and that's when everything changed. Instead of lying low, Nancy joined the Special Operations Executive, SOE, Britain's secret spy organization. She trained in weapons, explosives, hand-to-hand combat, and parachuting behind enemy lines. The same woman who once wrote society columns in Paris was now preparing to drop into Nazi-occupied France, armed, trained, and hungry for payback. She wasn't done running. Now she was going to hunt. It's April 1944. France is still under Nazi control. Allied forces are planning D-Day, the biggest invasion in history. But before the beaches could be stormed, someone had to ignite chaos behind enemy lines. That someone was Nancy Wake. In the dead of night, Nancy climbed aboard a British bomber carrying a parachute and a revolver. Her mission: land deep inside Nazi territory and unite scattered resistance fighters under one command. When she jumped, the wind ripped through her clothes, and as her parachute opened, she crashed hard into a tree. The men who found her thought she'd be shaken. Instead, she looked up at them and said with a grin, "Don't just stand there, get me down." That was Nancy Wake, tough, sharp, unbreakable. Within days, she was running operations in central France, blowing up train lines, ambushing German convoys, and coordinating airdrops for the resistance. She didn't just give orders, she led from the front. If there was a mission no one wanted, Nancy volunteered. If there was a Nazi patrol to sabotage, she was the first to load her gun. Her ability to command respect among hardened male fighters was legendary. They called her Madame André, and soon she had over 7,000 resistance fighters under her command. Together, they waged a campaign of sabotage that tore through Nazi supply lines. When the Germans sent troops to crush her network, she hit back harder, cutting communications, derailing trains, and disappearing before dawn. But even as the victories piled up, Nancy carried a wound no one could see. Back in Marseille, her husband Henry Fiocca had been captured and executed by the Gestapo for refusing to betray her. She never found out until after the war. Her revenge, to keep fighting, harder than ever. By the time D-Day arrived, her resistance unit had crippled German movements across southern France. She didn't just help prepare for liberation, she made it possible. Nancy Wake, the white mouse the Nazis could never catch, became one of the most decorated women of World War II, honoured by Britain, France, the US, and Australia. The war ended. The guns went silent. Europe tried to breathe again. But for Nancy Wake, silence wasn't peace. She returned to Marseille, the city where it all began, to find her home empty, her husband Henri gone, the man who had loved her, sheltered her, and refused to betray her, tortured and executed by the Gestapo. Nancy didn't cry, not in public. She simply said, "I killed a lot of Germans during the war, and I'm sorry I didn't kill more." It wasn't revenge anymore. It was grief turned into steel. For her service, Nancy was awarded medals from Britain, France, the US, and Australia. But when the Australian government offered her payment for her war work, she refused. "There's only one reward I want," she said, "the freedom of France." After the war, she tried politics, even running for office in Australia, but the battlefield was gone, and she never quite fit into the quiet life that followed. Years later, she moved to London, living in a small apartment with the same toughness and independence that had defined her wartime years. Even into her 90s, she could still drink anyone under the table and tell stories that would silence a room. When asked how she wanted to be remembered, she said simply, "I was good at killing Nazis." That's all. But Nancy Wake was far more than that. She was the face of courage in a world collapsing into fear. A woman who stood where few dared, and fought not for glory, but for freedom. Nancy passed away in 2011 at the age of 98. Her ashes were scattered in the same region of France where she once fought, led, and defied the impossible. In the end, she didn't just escape the Nazis, she outlived them, and that was her greatest victory.